The bearskin goes on last. That is the rule nobody tells you about. Not in the manual, not in training, not in the 16 weeks at Pirbright where they break you down and rebuild you into something that can stand completely still while a stranger takes a photograph 2 inches from your face. Nobody writes it down anywhere. You just learn it. The bearskin goes on last because once it is on, you are no longer entirely yourself. You are the post. You are the box. You are the 273 years of unbroken ceremony that Buckingham Palace has been performing for tourists who will watch you for 4 minutes, film you for 2, and then walk to the gift shop to buy a miniature version of you for £6.50. Marcus had been doing this for 4 years. He knew the weight of the tunic across his shoulders, 17 pounds of wool and brass, by the time you counted the buttons. He knew the exact angle at which the chin strap should sit, tight enough to hold the bearskin through wind, but not so tight that your jaw locked during the long hours of absolute stillness. He knew which floorboard in the sentry box creaked if you shifted your weight at the wrong moment, and he had learned, through painful experience on a Tuesday in February, 18 months ago, never to shift his weight at the wrong moment. What he did not know, on this particular morning, was that today was going to be different. He felt it before he could name it. Something in the quality of the crowd already forming at the railings, 40 minutes before his shift even officially began. They were louder than usual, more organized somehow. 2 tour guides were already positioned near the gate, clipboards raised, groups arranged in tidy semicircles. A man in a red jacket near the far railing had his phone out not to take a photo, but to read something. He was squinting at the screen, nodding, as though confirming information he had looked up in advance. Marcus watched him for a moment. Then he looked at the sky, the flat gray of a London morning that had not yet decided whether to commit to sun or rain, and he finished pulling on his gloves. He had 22 minutes before the post began. He used them to stand very straight and think about nothing at all. This was a skill that had taken 2 years to develop properly. The ability to empty the mind completely, to become a kind of human architecture, solid and purposeless and immune to distraction. Some of the younger lads in the regiment still could not do it. They would think about lunch, or their girlfriends, or whether Arsenal had won. Marcus had stopped thinking about Arsenal years ago, which he considered one of his finer personal achievements. He walked to the box. He did not look at the crowd as he took his position, but he noticed, from the very edge of his vision, that the man in the red jacket had put his phone away and was now watching Marcus with the focused expression of someone who believed he knew exactly what was about to happen. Marcus had learned to distrust that expression above all others. He squared his shoulders. He breathed out slowly. The shift began. There is a sign. There are, in fact, several signs. They are positioned at what the palace administration considers optimal visibility points, which is to say, they are impossible to miss unless you are actively trying not to see them, which Marcus had discovered a significant portion of the visiting public was. The signs are clear. They are translated into 6 languages. They use simple sentences and, in one case, a small diagram. They explain that the King's Guard is on active duty. They explain that guards cannot respond to questions. They explain that a certain physical boundary must be maintained at all times. The signs have been there for years. They do not work. Or rather, and this was the thing Marcus had begun to understand slowly, over hundreds of shifts and thousands of tourists, they work on the wrong people. The tourists who were never going to cause a problem read the signs carefully, nodded, and stood respectfully at the appropriate distance. The tourists who were going to cause a problem also read the signs carefully. They just read them as a technical document, a blueprint, a detailed map of exactly where the edges were, which they could then approach with surgical precision. The tour guide nearest the gate, a woman in her 40s with a voice that carried like a foghorn across open water, was demonstrating this principle in real time. So what you want to understand, she was telling her group, raising her clipboard like a conductor's baton, is that the guard cannot speak to you. He cannot smile. He cannot acknowledge you in any conventional social way. However, and here she paused for emphasis, turning slightly toward the sentry box as though Marcus were a museum exhibit she was annotating, he can move. He will march. And if you get too close, he will shout. The group leaned forward as one, like a single organism responding to stimulus. How close is too close? Someone asked from the back. Ah, said the tour guide, with the satisfied smile of someone who had been waiting for exactly this question. That is what we are going to find out. Marcus did not move. He did not blink. He let his gaze pass over and through the group in that particular way he had practiced, the way that was not quite looking at anything and not quite looking at nothing. A focused vacancy that said, without words, that he was aware of everything and responding to none of it. But internally, he filed a note. This group, he thought, this group is going to be a problem, not because they were hostile, not because they were disrespectful in any conscious way, because they were, at this moment, receiving what they believed to be expert instruction on the precise mechanics of how to interact with him. They were being educated. And education, Marcus had found, was the single most dangerous thing a tourist could arrive with. Ignorant tourists were simple. They wandered close, they got a shout or a stamp, they jumped back, they laughed, they left. It was clean, it was brief, it followed a predictable pattern. Informed tourists were something else entirely. Informed tourists had done their research. They had watched YouTube videos and read travel blogs and consulted TripAdvisor pages titled things like "Tips for Getting the Guard to React," posted by people who had been to the palace once in 2019 and now considered themselves authorities. Informed tourists arrived with strategies. They arrived with questions like, how close is too close? Not because they intended to cross the line, but because they wanted to stand as close to the line as possible without crossing it, which, in Marcus's experience, meant they crossed it approximately 60% of the time anyway, just with more confidence than the ignorant tourists and significantly less ability to identify the moment things had gone wrong. The tour guide finished her briefing. Her group dispersed toward the railings. The man in the red jacket was still there, Marcus noticed, still watching, still with that expression of someone who believed he knew what he was doing. Marcus breathed slowly. It was going to be a long shift. The first one arrived at 11 minutes past 10. She was a woman in her mid-30s, sensible shoes, a tote bag with a museum logo on it, the kind of person who read everything before she went anywhere and arrived pre-armed with context. She approached the sentry box at a measured pace, the pace of someone who had pre-decided her trajectory. She stopped at what she clearly believed was the precise correct distance. She tilted her head. She studied Marcus with the calm, analytical expression of someone completing a task. Then she leaned forward just slightly, just fractionally, and said, at a volume she had probably also calculated in advance, I know you can't speak. I just want you to know I deeply respect what you do. Marcus said nothing. He was, professionally speaking, required to say nothing. But something about the careful architecture of that sentence, the way it was constructed to require no response while clearly anticipating one, made the muscles in his jaw tighten imperceptibly. She waited 3 full seconds. Then she nodded, satisfied, as though his silence had confirmed something, and walked away. He watched her go. That was the thing about the respectful ones. They were not wrong, exactly. They had done everything correctly. And yet the performance of having done everything correctly was its own kind of intrusion. She had not stood too close. She had not spoken out of turn. She had simply announced her own virtue at him and then departed, leaving behind the faint residue of an interaction he had not agreed to participate in. Marcus breathed. 12 minutes later, the second one. This was a man, early 60s. One of those compact and purposeful men who walk as though they have somewhere important to be even when they are on holiday. He arrived at the sentry box with his hands clasped behind his back, a posture Marcus recognized immediately as the universal signal for "I have read about this, and I am doing it correctly." He stood at exactly the right distance. He did not speak. He nodded once slowly, in what was probably intended as a gesture of military solidarity, man to man, duty to duty. Then he said, "At ease." He said it quietly, almost under his breath, as though he genuinely believed this was something Marcus had been waiting to hear from a retired accountant from Coventry. Marcus did not move. He did not alter his expression by a single degree. But somewhere in the locked and carefully maintained room at the back of his mind, where he kept all the reactions he was not allowed to have, something made a small, exasperated sound. At ease. He had been a foot guard for 4 years. He had stood in the rain for 4 hours straight. He had maintained his composure while a toddler pressed its face against his boot and left a smear of chocolate ice cream on the shine he had spent 40 minutes applying that morning. He had withstood stag parties, hen parties, school groups, and one memorable afternoon when a pigeon had landed on his bearskin and stayed there for 11 minutes while a crowd of 200 people photographed it. He had never, in 4 years, been told to stand at ease by a civilian and not had to actively suppress the instinct to respond. The man nodded again, satisfied, and walked away. Third one, a teenager 16 or so, clearly operating on a dare from the group of friends watching from a safe distance. He approached fast, the way teenagers approach everything they are uncertain about, with speed substituting for confidence. He stopped just inside the boundary, not by much, just enough. He stared at Marcus. Marcus stared through him. The boy's friends made encouraging sounds from the railings. The boy said, "Blink." Just that. Just the single word, delivered with the concentrated hopefulness of someone who had seen a video online of a guard blinking when told to blink, and was now attempting to replicate the experiment. Marcus did not blink. The boy waited. Marcus did not blink. The boy's friends groaned. He shrugged, turned, walked back. And Marcus, watching the boys retreating back, thought, that one at least was honest. He wanted a reaction and he asked for one directly. There was something almost admirable in it, compared to the woman with the museum bag who had constructed a sentence specifically designed to make his non-response feel like agreement. But then, and this was the thing, the woman with the museum bag had also not crossed the line. And the man who told him to stand at ease had also not crossed the line. And the teenager had been perhaps 4 inches inside the acceptable perimeter, which was enough for Marcus to angle his gaze slightly, which had been enough to make the boy step back. Nobody had technically done anything wrong. And yet Marcus felt, by 11:45, the particular tiredness that had nothing to do with standing still and everything to do with being constantly almost tested by people who were almost informed. He looked toward the far railing. The man in the red jacket was still there. He was now eating a sandwich. His name, Marcus would later learn from the tourist information sheet that palace staff occasionally compiled from visitor interaction logs, was probably something like Graham or possibly Derek. He had the energy of a Graham or a Derek, a man of determined leisure, unhurried and absolutely convinced of his own careful preparation. He had first appeared at 9:52. At 9:52, he had stood at the railing with his phone, reading. Marcus had clocked him then and filed him in the category of researcher, the type who arrives having consumed significant online material and now wants to validate it against primary sources. At 10:34, he had moved closer, still outside the boundary, still technically correct in his positioning, but closer. He had watched the teenager attempt the blink experiment with the expression of a man taking notes. At 11:48, which was now, which was when Marcus was watching him finish his sandwich with the focused attention of a man who had somewhere to be next, he crumpled the sandwich wrapper, put it in his jacket pocket with the neat efficiency of someone who had thought about litter in advance, and began walking toward the sentry box. He had a look on his face. Marcus had categorized this look over 4 years as the approach look. It was distinct from the curious look, which was open and slightly nervous. It was distinct from the aggressive look, which was rare but recognizable by a particular set of the jaw. The approach look was specific to a certain kind of man, confident, informed, benevolent, who was about to demonstrate something to someone, possibly to himself. Graham Orderic stopped at the correct distance. He stood quietly for a moment. Then, in a calm and conversational tone, as though continuing a discussion they had been having for some time, he said, "I read that you march to the corner every 10 minutes. It's been 11, just so you know." Marcus looked through him. Graham Orderic nodded thoughtfully, as though Marcus had confirmed the information. He left. He came back at 12:22. This time he was carrying a tourist map, which he had folded with suspicious neatness into a small rectangle. He stood at the correct distance again. He looked at Marcus. He looked at the map. He looked back at Marcus. "The march pattern," he said, as though beginning a seminar, "goes north to south along the forecourt then." Marcus stamped. It was a clean, precise, regulation stamp. The sharp crack of a boot heel against stone that is designed to interrupt, to redirect, to communicate without words that a boundary has been approached. It was not aimed at Graham Orderic personally. It was aimed at the air between them, at the half second before the man finished his sentence and made everything more complicated. Graham Orderic stopped. He stepped back one pace. He looked at the folded map. He looked at Marcus. His expression was that of a man recalibrating rather than retreating, not embarrassed, not frightened, merely updating his data. "Right," he said quietly and left again. Marcus returned to forward gaze. But he watched, from the edge of his vision, Graham Orderic walk back to the railing and take out his phone. He was typing something, probably updating his notes, probably preparing for the third approach with the adjusted information. At 1:17, during which time 3 more tourists had attempted various forms of technically correct but spiritually wrong interaction with the sentry box, including one woman who stood at the correct distance and read aloud from a guidebook as though Marcus were an illustration in it, Graham Orderic returned. He had abandoned the map. He had also, Marcus noticed, abandoned the approach look. He now wore something closer to the expression of a man who had accepted a challenge. He stood at the correct distance. He said nothing. He simply stood there, looking at Marcus in complete silence for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Marcus, who could stand completely still and silent for considerably longer than 4 minutes and 30 seconds, stood completely still and silent for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. At the 4-minute 30-second mark, a pigeon landed between them. Both of them looked at it. The pigeon looked at neither of them, walked 3 steps to the left and flew away. Graham Orderic made a sound that was almost a laugh. Then he caught himself. Then he nodded at Marcus, a different kind of nod this time, not the man-to-man solidarity nod of the Coventry accountant, but something quieter and more genuine. The nod of someone who had just realized he had been in a competition without fully intending to enter one. He walked away. He did not come back. Marcus noted, without pleasure and without exactly displeasure, that he had won that particular exchange. They arrived at 1:44. A family, 2 parents, 3 children, ages approximately 8, 6, and what Marcus estimated was somewhere between 3 and 4, but could have been older because the child was operating at a velocity that made accurate assessment difficult. They were the organized kind of family, the kind where the parents had clearly discussed in advance how this was going to go. The mother had a printed sheet of some kind, which she was consulting as they approached. The father was already positioning the children in a line, smallest to tallest, with the brisk efficiency of someone arranging a photograph before the subject moves. Marcus observed all of this from the locked room part of his attention. The mother looked up from her printed sheet and addressed her children in the careful tone of a parent delivering pre-briefed information. "Now," she said, "the guard cannot talk to you. He cannot smile. He is doing his job. You can stand near him but not too near, and you must not try to make him laugh." The 8-year-old nodded, serious, taking this in. The 6-year-old nodded, less serious, already looking at something else. The 3 or 4-year-old, whose name appeared to be Rosie based on the number of times it was used in the next 90 seconds, was not nodding. Rosie was looking at Marcus with an expression of complete and unguarded fascination, the kind of expression that only children and certain species of bird are capable of producing: total attention, zero social filtering, no awareness whatsoever of the concept of personal boundaries. The father finished arranging the children. He straightened up. He looked at Marcus with the confident expression of a man who had done his research and briefed his family, and was now prepared to have a smooth and well-managed sentry box interaction. "Right," he said to the children. "You can walk up to approximately," he consulted some internal calculation, "about here." He indicated a point on the ground with his foot. The 8-year-old walked to that point, stopped, looked at Marcus. Marcus looked through him. The 8-year-old looked back at his father. "He's not doing anything." "He's not supposed to do anything," said the father, with the patience of someone explaining a concept he had specifically prepared to explain. "He's standing guard. That's what he does. But he's not moving. He will move, he marches. Every so often he marches." The 8-year-old turned back to Marcus with renewed interest. The 6-year-old, who had been drifting slightly leftward in the way that 6-year-olds drift, not dramatically, just incrementally like a boat with a slow current pulling at it, had now drifted to a point that was perceptibly beyond the indicated boundary. Not far, just enough. Marcus angled his gaze. The 6-year-old stopped drifting, startled, and drifted back. The father nodded with satisfaction. "See, he notices." "He noticed me," said the 6-year-old, with a combination of pride and alarm that was very specific to being 6 years old. And then Rosie, who had been standing slightly behind her mother this entire time, which everyone had taken as evidence of shyness, which it absolutely was not, walked forward. She did not walk to the indicated point on the ground. She walked past it. She walked past where the 8-year-old was standing. She walked to a distance that made Marcus's training engage with a clarity that years of practice had made automatic, and she stopped. She was approximately 4 feet from him. She tilted her head back to look up at him. He was significantly taller than her, considerably so, in the bearskin especially. And she looked at him with those completely unguarded eyes, and she said, very quietly, in the particular voice that very small children use when they are asking a genuine question and have not yet learned to anticipate the answer, "Are you okay?" Marcus did not move. He did not smile. He did not blink. He did not alter his expression by a fraction of a degree. His body remained exactly as his training had made it, straight, still, present, and professionally absent. But in the locked room at the back of his mind, something happened that had not happened in 4 years. Something that felt alarmingly like the precise beginning of a smile. He stamped. It was the right thing to do. It was the regulation response to a proximity breach. It was clean and correct, and it served its purpose. Rosie took 2 quick steps back and bumped into her mother's legs. No alarm, no tears, just those wide eyes now wider. "The guard stamped," said the 8-year-old, delighted. "He stamped because you were too close, Rosie," said the mother, though her voice was not entirely steady, and Marcus noted that she was pressing her lips together in a way that suggested she was also, somewhere behind her parental composure, suppressing something. The father was looking at the ground. Rosie, from behind her mother's legs, looked at Marcus. "Sorry," she said. It was a very small word. It was the kind of small word that lands differently depending on who says it and how. Rosie said it the way very small children say sorry when they mean it completely and have no idea why the thing they did was wrong, with the full weight of genuine feeling and zero understanding of the rule they had broken. Marcus breathed. He noted with a calm professional alarm, in danger. It happened at 2:13. There was a group, not a tour group, not an organized party, just the organic accumulation of individuals who had been circling the sentry box for the better part of an hour and had gradually, through some collective drift of confidence, moved closer than they should have been. 12, perhaps 15 people. None of them had intended to crowd the space. Each of them had taken one individually reasonable step forward in response to the people around them doing the same, until the individually reasonable steps had compounded into an unreasonable collective position. Marcus had been watching it happen for 6 minutes. He had angled his gaze twice. He had stamped once, which had created a ripple effect. The people nearest him stepped back, which opened space, into which the people behind them stepped forward, restoring the problem with different personnel. He had done everything the regulation response required. And then the man arrived. Not Graham or Derek, a different man, younger, more assertive, the kind of tourist who narrates his own experiences as they happen for the benefit of the people around him, whether or not those people have requested narration. He pushed forward through the assembled group with the confidence of someone who believed he understood the rules better than the people already there. "You can actually stand here," he announced to no one in particular, positioning himself at a point that was technically defensible but spiritually indefensible, close enough to be a problem, calibrated precisely enough that it was difficult to identify as a clear violation. "I've read up on this. The regulation boundary is..." Marcus stamped. The man did not step back. He was the type, Marcus recognized, who treated a stamp as the opening move in a negotiation. "I'm not over the line," the man said pleasantly. Marcus stamped again. "I read that." Marcus stepped out of the box. This was the escalation that his training reserved for specific situations, not an emergency, not a threat, but a sustained and knowing refusal to respond to regulation signals from someone who understood them well enough to exploit their precision. He stepped forward, toward the man, and in the voice that 4 years of drilling had shaped into something that was not quite a shout, but occupied the same acoustic space as one, he said, "Stand back, sir. Stand behind the line now." The crowd pulled back. Not just the man, the whole accumulated group. 15 people stepping backward in a single collective movement like a wave revering direction. The man who had read up on this stepped back with them, his expression shifting from pleasant to startled, which was the expression most people wore when they discovered that a regulation response and an actual human response were two different things. Silence settled. Marcus returned to the box. He squared his shoulders. He returned his gaze to the middle distance. And in the quiet that followed, the particular quality of quiet that comes after an authority moment, when a crowd recalibrates itself and decides how to behave next, he thought about what he had spent the shift watching. The woman with the museum tote, the Coventry accountant who said "at ease," the teenager who asked him to blink, Graham or Derek and his 4 visits and his sandwich and his silent 4-minute standoff, the mother with her printed sheet and her 3 children and Rosie, who had walked past every instruction and asked if he was okay in a voice that had come very close to undoing everything. All of them had read the signs. Most of them had understood the rules. And the understanding, the specific quality of thinking you know, had been in almost every case the thing that created the problem. Not malice, not ignorance, knowledge incorrectly calibrated, information confidently misapplied. The man who had said, "I've read up on this," had been the most dangerous person at the sentry box today. Not because he wanted to cause trouble, because he was certain he wasn't. Marcus breathed. He looked at the crowd. They were settling now. reorganizing into the shapes of people who were watching something, rather than testing it. A few had moved to better vantage points for the 2 o'clock ceremony. Some were consulting phones. A small child near the railing had a flag. Rosie, Marcus noticed, was still there, near the back of the family group. She was looking at him, not testing, not analyzing, just looking with those unfiltered eyes, the way she had from the beginning, as though she were watching something she found genuinely beautiful and didn't yet know she was supposed to have an opinion about it. He looked through her, or tried to. Phase 7, the ceremony and the close. The changing of the guard begins without announcement. That is one of the things the YouTube videos and the travel blogs and the tour guides with their clipboards never quite convey accurately. It does not begin with a signal that the crowd can identify in advance. There is no preliminary alarm, no tanning announcement, no moment where someone with authority says it's starting now. It begins because it is 2 o'clock, and at 2 o'clock it has always begun. The music comes first, the band forming up somewhere inside the palace grounds, the sound arriving at the forecourt ahead of the procession itself, that particular regimental march that people who have heard it once tend to remember for the rest of their lives. The crowd turned. Marcus watched them turn. It was one of his quiet satisfactions, this moment when the crowd that had spent an hour organizing itself around him suddenly forgot he existed. All that accumulated attention, all that careful research and strategic positioning and calibrated proximity, dissolved in an instant into something much simpler. They just wanted to see. They tilted their heads toward the sound. They raised their phones in a completely different configuration now, not aimed at him, aimed at the gate, aimed at what was coming. The new guard came through the gate in formation. Marcus could hear the stamp of boots, precise and collective, the sound of multiple bodies trained into a single rhythm. He kept his eyes forward. He had done this handover hundreds of times. He knew its shape and timing the way he knew his own heartbeat. The ceremony moved through its stages. The crowd was quiet in a different way now, not the managed quiet of people trying to behave correctly, but the spontaneous quiet of people watching something that commanded their attention without effort. Children who had been fidgeting were still. Adults who had been consulting maps or phones had put them away. The man who had said, "I've read up on this," was watching the gate with an expression that Marcus, from his peripheral vision, could only describe as open. The reading up had stopped. He was just watching. The family, the mother, the father, the 3 children, had found a position near the railing. The 8-year-old had his flag up. The 6-year-old was standing on something to see better. Rosie was on her father's shoulders, which was the correct height for a 3 or 4-year-old attending a ceremony involving tall men in bearskins, and she was watching with the complete concentration of someone watching something they have already decided is the best thing they have ever seen. The handover completed. Marcus stepped back. He was no longer the post. He was briefly in the small transitional window between the ceremony's end and his formal march off, just a man standing in a forecourt on a gray London morning, watching a crowd watch something beautiful. He let himself look at it for a moment. The new guard was in the box. The band was still playing. The crowd was warm in a way that crowds become when they have seen something that needed no explanation, no briefing, no printed sheet, no phone research. It had simply happened in front of them, and they had understood it without needing to understand it. He began his march off. As he passed the section of railing where the family was standing, he kept his gaze straight ahead, as training and regulation required. He did not slow. He did not alter his bearing by a fraction. But from his peripheral vision, which was, after 4 years, exceptionally well developed, he saw Rosie on her father's shoulders, watching him pass. Her hand came up. The small wave of someone who genuinely believed this gesture would be seen and appreciated, because it had not yet occurred to her that it might not be. Marcus marched past. He marched through the gate. He marched into the interior yard, away from the crowd and the cameras and the signs that hadn't worked on the people they were meant for. Away from Graham Orderic's 4 visits and the Coventry accountant's military nod and the man who had read up on things and stood precisely at the edge of the wrong distance. He stopped. He stood for a moment in the quiet of the interior yard, in the particular silence that exists behind ceremony, the silence of a thing being done correctly, repeatedly, without explanation. And he thought about what the shift had shown him, which was this. The signs could say anything. The tour guides could brief their groups with clipboards and confidence. The travel blogs could publish their tips. The informed tourists could arrive armed with their research and their calibrated distances and their quiet announcements of respect. All of it was, in its way, an attempt to make something understandable that worked precisely because it did not need to be understood. The guard was not a puzzle. The ceremony was not a test to be passed with the right information. It was a thing being maintained, old and specific and uninterested in being decoded. The more clearly it was understood, the less stable the understanding became. Because understanding it meant reducing it, and reducing it meant finding the edges, and finding the edges meant standing at them. And standing at the edges with your research and your maps and your folded sandwich wrapper and your sincere desire to do this correctly, that was, in the end, the thing that made it most fragile. Rosie had not understood it at all. Rosie had walked past every instruction and every indicated point on the ground, and she had looked up at him. This statue, this post, this 273-year-old ceremony in a uniform, and asked if he was okay. Which was, Marcus thought, the only question any of them had asked all day that he had actually wanted to answer. He pulled off his gloves. The bearskin came off last. That was the rule.